what's going on.
Hello gamers, today we are taking a look at another sequel slash prequel for a game I've played before on the channel. That game being Road 96, and the game we're looking at being Road 96 Mile Zero, or as us non-Americans call it, Road 96 0.6 kilometers. But anyways, if you couldn't guess, once again this is a follow-up to the hit game Road 96 from a couple years ago, which I've also covered on the channel. However, Mile Zero is a prequel, and well, we all know prequels are the best, as they are where the fun begins. Mile Zero takes place a couple months before the start of Road 96, as the game follows Zoe, one of the non-playable characters from Road 96. Zoe being one of the many teams you run in on the roads of Petria. This game, however, focuses on before she was out living on the roads, living her life in the city of White Sands, one of the more, I guess, important living areas within White Sands, that being the Oasis, where she is living next to such important people like Sonia, the country's only news presenter, and being neighbours with President Tyrak himself, as her dad being the Minister of Oil, making him most likely the second most important person in all of Petria. And within the city of White Sands, there is Zoe's best friend, a boy by the name of Kaito, the game's other playable character, the game having two playable characters. Kaito, unlike his friend Zoe, had not had such a lucky draw in the game of life, with Kaito and his family being from a large apartment building in Tyrak Square, a zone of White Sands that holds all of the workers and hired help. And before that, Kaito and his family lived within Colton City, an industrial powerhouse within Petria. So industrial that the air pollution and soil pollution within the city is so bad that it was making the residents very sick, including a young girl by the name of Aya, Kaito's ex-girlfriend, who unfortunately passed away due to cancer caused by the conditions within the city. Before I dive deeper into the story, I want to quickly comment on the game's graphics, and it has the same art style as you'd expect from the first game, both games only being 2 years apart, and plus with art styles you're less likely to get better graphics. But I feel that's not a bad thing, because not every game needs to be the most realistic thing of all time. And over the short amount of time that I played Road 96, that art style has still continued to grow on me. I know in my video on Road 96, I compared the graphic art style to Life is Strange. And with this, I will say that I don't see that as much in this game. Maybe that's just because I haven't played Life is Strange in quite a bit. I think the last time I booted it up was when I did my video on True Colors. But it does seem a little bit different from the first game. Not worse, just different. The story opens up with Kaito talking about Aya, his ex. And with that, as Kaito starts to access some memories of her, we are given our first look at how this game ends every chapter of its story. And that is with a Subway Surfers-esque sort of dream segment, Kaito on his skateboard and Zoe on rollerblades. During these segments, a lot of the time features a conversation between Kaito and Zoe, with them trying to convince each other of something. Most commonly about the state of Petria, with Zoe giving a somewhat doubtful but more hopeful look on the outcome of our country's future, with her seeing the quote-unquote good side of the country, and Kaito, who's had a more jaded view on the events of Petria's past. Perhaps a more revolutionary outlook, with Kaito not necessarily being a part of the Black Brigade, a freedom fighting group from the first game, but having close relationships with some of the members and actively working with them to do jobs. And that's all I'm going to say directly on these segments, as they are my least favourite thing about this game. Subway Surfers, not really my thing. I prefer the cars going downhill on Grand Theft Auto 5. One last thing I want to comment on the Subway Surfers segments is each segment has its own backing track, a song added to improve the sort of feel of it, which is of course nothing particularly special. But one of these, however, has a song from the Midnight, and I absolutely love the Midnight. So that was nice to hear, even though I spent half the thing trying to actually figure out if it was the Midnight or not. And whilst focusing on the vocals and the singing of the song, I may have hit a couple of the objects on the tracks, but that's fine. The story itself is set on the lead up to a massive speech by Tyrak and a large sandstorm hitting the town of White Sands the day after the speech. On your way up to that point, most of the game is looking at the different views between Kaito and Zoe, with each character having a kind of alliance bar, with Zoe's alliance bar basically being believing all the propaganda from the Tyrak government, or with her starting to maybe doubt things that she has been through. With the way I personally played Zoe, she was leaning more towards doubting the administration, mainly because in my head that makes a lot of sense with where she ends up in Road 96. And Kaito's sort of bar has him leaning more towards either a violent or peaceful revolution, but either way, him believing that a revolution is the future of the country. With my Kaito leaning a little bit more towards the violent one, however, only just, as I feel Zoe may have weakened his stance on the everyone related to the government must die. And it would seem that Kaito's main focus towards the end of the game is to get his family out of Petria. And in order to do that, he makes a deal with both Zoe and the Black Brigade. The deal with the Black Brigade is to steal a file that proves Tyrak was behind the border crossing attack in 86. And in return, they would provide him with a safe way out of the country for him, his mum, and his dad to cross. The deal with Zoe is a little different, as Kaito tells Zoe what really happened during the attack of 86, and she doesn't know how to take it as she was there during the attack, but still agrees to help her friend steal the file from Tyrak's manor. A place she luckily knows very well due to A, babysitting Tyrak's kid Colin, and also having a toy model of Tyrak's house, as apparently that's just something Tyrak handed out to everybody upon having it built in the oasis within White Sands. So they go to retrieve the file the day of the speech. However, Zoe doesn't know what to find and does not know if the file is real at all. So the deal between Zoe and Kaito is that if the file is real, Kaito will take Zoe with him when they leave Petria. And what do you know, after one of those Subway Surfer segments, they find the file within Tyrak's very large and confusing house. However, while leaving, the cops show up and Kaito and Zoe separate. The next day, Zoe is setting out to find Kaito in the town. However, a massive sandstorm, aptly named Sandstorm Sonia, named by, of course, Sonia, the news reporter, because egos, just so happens to be hitting White Sands at the same time as she's out searching for Kaito. Zoe getting trapped between a bunch of cops. Luckily enough, however, Tyrak's son is also there, as he had escaped the manor the night before due to Kaito and Zoe's antics. And he helps Zoe create a distraction so she has long enough to make it to the hideout that she shared with Kaito. Upon arriving, however, finding out that Kaito had left without her. So with her bag already packed, Zoe hits the road to find them. And after meeting Alex, the boy genius from Road 96, she finds the location of Kaito and his family. And, more importantly, the file they stole from Tyrak and also Black Brigade members. And whilst the Kaito family is trying to make a deal with the Black Brigades, Zoe steals the file, getting into a massive fight with Kaito and winning, taking off on the road that many other teens in Petria travel. And Kaito is now left to deal with the now angry leader of the Black Brigade, Robert, and after little convincing, Robert takes Kaito as they leave his parents behind, Kaito seemingly becoming a member of the Black Brigade, even though we never see him in the follow-up game, Road 96. And then at the very end of the game's story, we see Zoe walking forwards into a very familiar camp if you've played 96, where she sets up her trumpet and starts playing some tunes whilst thinking of Kaito. And what became of their friendship, we're wondering if they will ever meet again and what to do with that file. Now, of course, we now know that that file is most likely the file she sacrifices the life of many other teens on the road of Petria to get out of the country. And that is the story of Mile Zero. Once again, 0.6 kilometers. Pretty good, if I don't say so myself. Although, I will say there were some downsides, mainly coming from the fact that this is a prequel. And if you're playing this game secondary when you already roughly know what happens, or at least what happens in your playthrough of Road 96, it feels like you sort of have to do certain actions as Zoe to make it align with where she gets to in the other game, which is also something I feel happens a lot in movies. It's like how when, I don't want to say old people, that's really offensive, Jesus. When old people watch the prequels in Star Wars, they knew that Anakin is Vader, but we got to see the journey that led to the creation of Vader. However, when you are controlling the journey in video games, it can really seem like some of the proposed choices that you have within the story will have a little effect, and also like you're sort of enamored to pick one over the other instead of sort of actually controlling and molding your character in the way you would want to see them molded. So I would definitely recommend you play this game, Mile Zero, first, and then go ahead and play Road 96 if you haven't played either. Even then, it might be a bit difficult to sort of come to ties with it, because either way, if you're playing Road 96 Mile Zero and you decide that Zoe's just 100% on board with the government, obviously you get a different story to me, and maybe they sort of justify her still going out on the road if you go full Tyrak as God sort of approach. But I just feel it wouldn't make sense to then go play Road 96 where she's this teen trying to escape Petria. But maybe she sees the file when you go full Tyrak loving government and then decides that no, this is not right. But then it feels like you'd make all those decisions loving the government, and your character out of your control reads one file and goes no and undoes all the work you just did. But I don't know, that's just more my problem with prequels in general. Nothing really to do with this game. I just feel prequels in video games are a bit worse than prequels in movies, because you sort of feel like you have control. But then towards the end, it's immediately ripped away from you to be able to continue with the next game. But anyways, it's still worth checking out. And I also recommend that you maybe check out the subscribe feature, or maybe look at some other videos I have done in the past, or maybe even if you want to, leave a like. But that is once again only if you want to, but if you do, I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Peace.